Now, ever since I've been into camping, my weapon of choice has always been the proven and ever reliable canvas swag. These things come in a range of styles and designs to suit pretty much all camping needs, and until now, I've never had a good enough reason not to use one. But the style of camping that I do now has changed, as well as the car that I do it in and the people that I do it with. And so with that, I think it's time for me to elevate my sleeping setup. So what exactly has made the good old swag not so suitable for me anymore? Well, first is the type of camping that I do. Patrick and I have been pretty lucky to travel to some incredible parts of Australia, and this kind of camping is awesome, but it's the kind that has you setting up in a different part of the country every single night. This means that the swag is getting set up and packed up every day, whether you like it or not, and while this is fine for trips of about a week or so, once you start to spend a month on the road, it does get pretty old pretty quick. Now, second is the vehicle that takes me camping. Now, before the Patrol's rebuild, I could easily toss a swag in the back of the ute and be on my way, but since fitting it up with the new canopy, it's really hard to fit a swag in it or even really outside it. And yes, I could tie down to the roof, but that would require some sort of, roof rack to be made for it anyway. And having a big swag rolled up on the roof doesn't really lend itself to aerodynamics. Thirdly is who I go camping with, as I do now have someone who you guys are soon to meet that comes camping with me quite frequently, and it means that I now either need a double swag or at the very least 2 single swags to sleep us. So what is the solution? Well, I'm certainly not ready to tow a camper, and I'll be damned if I'm going to go back to the nightmare that is setting up a 2-man tent, so I think you can all kind of see where this is heading. So let's go get started on my sleeping setup overhaul that's going to transform the way I camp. Now, the first thing I have to think about is how I'm going to mount the rooftop tent to the car. Now, the tent I'm using specifically is a hard shell and it is aluminium, but I'm going to talk more specifically about the tent model itself later in the video. Now, I could mount it to the canopy or I could mount it to a separate rack, and this would normally be very easily done with the universal channels that come on this tent and many other tents like it. But I have a few requirements for my mounting. The first being to keep the tent as low as possible on the roof. This not only keeps the center of gravity low, which is good for handling and four-wheel driving, but it also means it will eliminate any gaps between the mounting surface and the tent, which could potentially cause wind noise. I also think that keeping it as low as possible will look the sleekest as well. In order to achieve this sleek look, I won't be able to use the universal rails on the underside of the tent, so we're going to have to factor that into our mounting. Now, a lot of people will mount their tent through their canopy, but I don't particularly want to drill holes in this. And aside from that as well, the way I've got my tray designed and my canopy set up, the height of the headboard actually exceeds the tray, so I couldn't even flush mount it to here if I wanted to. Additionally, I also want to be able to mount the tent on the car regardless of whether I've got a canopy on there or not. And this is because I want to be able to retain the whole modularity of this setup. Now, a few of you would know that I already have a lift-off canopy, and this allows me to change the configuration of my car depending on the type of driving or the type of camping trip that I'm going on. This kind of modularity will end up leaving me with 4 different types of configurations I can have for the car. First is a bare tray setup. This gives me the lightest weight of the car and is the best for hard four-wheel driving. Second is just the canopy by itself, and this is great for short weekend trips away by myself where I still have my kitchen and 12-volt power setup. The third new configuration would be just the rooftop tent, and this would be reduced weight for hard four-wheel driving, but also with the comfort of a rooftop tent and the ability to sleep 2 people. And lastly, it would be the complete touring setup with the canopy and the rooftop tent, and this is for all my long overlanding trips. And the best part is all 4 of these different configurations will be easily interchanged by simply removing a few bolts. So with all that in mind, I'm going to start by making up a rear hoop for the tray, which the tent will be able to bolt directly to. So let's get stuck straight into it.
Now, like many of my other fabricating projects, this one begins with the boys at Phase Fab, who are helping me bend up some tube to make a rear headboard. Matt and Nathan have always been happy to help me out, and being that this rear hoop is essentially a replica of the front, it was super easy to measure out and bend to my exact requirements. Now, while I was at the boys' place, I got a peek at some of the fab work they've been doing, and I'll tell you what, this stuff looks sweet. So if you're interested in getting some bar work done by some local fellas doing some quality work, be sure to flick them a message at Phase Fab. So with my bent tube acquired, it's time to start getting everything put together. Like when I built the tray, I'm starting with a jig to help me keep everything square and aligned whilst welding. I began by cutting down my bent bits of tube to length and beveling the ends to ensure a strong weld. Then I could sit my pieces in the jig and clamp it in place before tacking it all together. And with the rear headboard all tacked together, we were almost ready to give it a test fit.
Alright, so to get the headboard to sleeve into the back of the tray, we've just turned up some tube down on the lathe, so we just had to turn it down to get the diameter exactly right to fit the 40 NB tube that I'm using. Now, pretty much, it's going to be super simple. the way that I've left the holes already open on the tray when I built the tray, that was so that this can sleeve in, headboard can just slot straight in nice and easy. So these drop down into there like so, and the headboard will sleeve on top. So we'll get the headboard over and we're gonna try and give it a test fit. The tolerances will be tight because obviously any miss angle will cause these to not go in straight. But yeah, we'll see how we go anyway.
Now, I wanted this to be a tight fit so that it didn't jiggle around while the car was moving, but it also had to come in and out easy enough without being a pain.
So this test fitted, but this passenger side one's still a bit tight to go in, and obviously I don't want to be too much of a pain to have to pull it in and out and it catching. So we're just going to chuck it back in the lathe, turn this bottom side down just, you know, a couple thou or whatever, and just see if we can just loosen it up ever so slowly, just so it's a bit easy to pull in and out.
So with the bar now fitting smoothly over the inserts, I could weld them in place. First, I had to mark and drill out holes in the base of the hoop, and this would allow me to plug weld the inserts. The plug welds would not only be really strong, but also leave me with my nice square edge that will meet flush against the floor of the tray.
Perfect. That actually went in pretty good. All right, so the bar fits. It actually slotted in way easier than I was expecting, which is good. It just slotted right in, which is sweet. So it's just tacked for the moment. So I'm gonna pull it back out, chuck it in the jig and do all the proper welds, keep it in the jig so make sure it doesn't close up or anything.
Movement in your steel while welding is almost inevitable, but if you can take precautions like this jig that I've got to help eliminate it, it really does help. With the bar all welded off, I could then start making up clamps for securing the tent. I'm essentially going to be making U-bolts out of plate steel and some bolts that will clamp up to the tent from underneath the front and rear headboard. These might not look like much, but I'm sure they'll be more than strong enough to hold down the tent. The other component of the bracket will be made out of some angled aluminium, which should blend in well with the hard aluminium shell of the tent. I'm designing and testing these brackets as I go to ensure they'll fit correctly to the tent, so hopefully with any luck they'll all turn out well. Once I'm happy that the brackets fit, I can then mark them out to be shaped so that they blend in better with the tent. With all the holes I drilled correctly fitting in their place, I could then take the brackets over to the bench grinder to help clean them up a little bit and look a bit more sleek. Next, I began prepping the bar for paint. This begins with the very fun task of grinding back all my welds until they're nice and smooth. I gave the bar a wipe down with some methylated spirits, ready for all the bare metal surfaces to be primed.
All right, so I've ground back the welds. Now what I'm gonna do, because it's like so cold down here in Melbourne at the moment, like we're getting, you know, max of like 8 degrees throughout the day, a lot of moisture in the air, and the moisture gets into the steel and can, you know, get trapped under the paint and make it rust. So the way to get it out is to heat it up. So I'm going to use the new King Chrome heat gun, the 241. It goes right up to like 650 degrees. There you go. So we're going to blast the metal, and with any luck, we should be able to see some of the moisture come out. And then once it's warmed up, I can just go over it with the primer just to cover all the bare metal surfaces.
I'm also hitting my aluminium brackets with a coat of good old Fiddly Bits Gloss Black.
Alright, so we're ready to start painting the ladder rack for the rear. Now, as for the paint, I'm going to use the exact same stuff that I used for the cab and the tray. So that's the Valspar Industrial Mix. It's all been colour mixed to match the car, obviously, and everything, so it should all fit in awesome. And it's all super easy to apply and put on, and it's a super strong and sturdy finish. So we'll start mixing up some paint, and then we can lay it down onto the bar.
The paint has to be mixed with the hardener at a ratio of 5:1 and also has to be thinned by 30%. And now we're ready to lay down some paint.
Alright, so I've got a coat down on the hoop. They come up pretty decent. There are a few runs. I'm not used to spraying with like a 2-pack. It's a lot thinner. So I probably could have got a little bit lighter on, but honestly, for the most part, it's pretty good. If I really want to, I can sand back some of the runs and then go over it again a lot lighter. That's a good thing about this paint. It's so easy to just cut back a bit and, you know, leave it or do it, go over again. So anyway, I reckon we'll leave that to dry and then be able to chuck it on the car, set it all up. All right, so the paint's dried on the hoop now. It's come up really good other than the runs that I put in it because I'm not a good painter. You could sand these out if you wanted to, but I'm running a bit tight for time because I'm actually heading away in 2 days' time. I'm not going to tell you where I'm going, but you'll soon find out. So I sort of just got to get it on the car, and this thing's so easy to pull in and out that at a later date I can sand it back again and go over it again, so that's easy enough to do. So for now, it's in a good enough state to be in, I reckon, and we're just going to throw it on the car and then we can get this tent all mounted up. All right, now before I sleeve these in, because I've left them raw and this is essentially raw in here because it didn't really get paint on the inside, I'm just gonna grease the outside so that they don't rust in there or seize in there. It'll just help them slide in and out a bit easier. So just a light film of grease on the bottom with some rubber grease. Should be easier to pull in and out. All right, now with any luck, this should slide in a hell of a lot easier. That's the thing too, like I did consider doing like a locking mechanism, which I still might do at a later date, but for now it's like a tight fit. Like it doesn't want to come out without persuasion, which is good because it means it's not sloppy. So I reckon we're just going to leave it like that.
And now we can do the final fit up of the rooftop tent.
All right, so tent's on. We can start bolting it up now. I've got my little U-bolts that I made up. I'm gonna add some sticky back foam on the inside of these just to stop it wearing against the paint, and we can start clamping it up.
Being that these clamps are attached from the exterior of the tent, it should make them super easy to pull on and off and encourage me to take the tent off when I need to. And luckily all the brackets are fitting up as they should, so with that I can go around and cut off the remaining thread on the U-bolts.
All right, so I'm almost ready to show you the full setup of the tent. It's all mounted, but first we're actually gonna put an awning on because I'm gonna need some cover while we're out here. So I got Pater to help me. We've actually got his old 270 awning. We've had it sitting in the shed here and I think it's gonna go perfect on my car. So I reckon we shall mount it up and yeah, it should be sick. All right, so we're all finished up in the shed and we've got the tent now mounted on the car and the awning as well, all finished up. So if you haven't realized it at this point, this is actually an Ocam Z Fold tent, and it's actually a bit different to any other tents that I had seen before in that it actually has like a twin stage sort of opening and it gives you heaps more room up top. So I'm gonna show you how it all works. First, let's do a quick run around the tent because I'm actually heading away in like an hour to go away, technically kind of overseas with the patrol. So we have to get this all done in time, but yeah, let's show you around the tent. So when we're looking at the Z Fold tent from the exterior, you can see the way I've mounted it. I've tried to keep it down as low as possible. So being a Z Fold, it is a little bit thicker than say Patrick's clamshell tent. So what I've done is use the U-bolts and brackets into the channel of the tent, and this has allowed me to mount it essentially hard down on the ladder racks. That's as low as it's ever gonna get, which is obviously the best for sort of weight distribution, lower center of gravity, all that sort of stuff. So, and honestly, being a Z Fold, yes, it is a little bit thicker, but I still think it actually looks slim for what it is. So honestly, I'm real happy with how that's come up. So when it comes to popping the tent, it's just as easy as all the other ones. So 2 latches at the end here, and then look, she already wants to go. And start on this end, and up and away she goes. And that's only half the process completed, but let me show you the next bit, which makes it really cool. And before you do this, take note that you can actually sleep in it like this, like a clamshell. If it's hammering down wind and you want a nice streamlined shape, you can actually sleep in it half deployed. And at the front, it's the same deal, 2 latches, and then it should just nice and easily go up. So with the tent deployed, the next thing is to try and get into it. So there's a few different ways that I can do it with this arrangement. So with the 270 awning packed up on the side, I can enter it from the back here, which is nice and easy, just like so. And it's also got the little awning as well, which covers the entrance. Now, in the event that I actually have the 270 awning open, some of you might be thinking, well, how are you gonna get inside the tent? Well, I have thought about that, so let me show you around the side. So on the driver's side here, I've actually got some more ladder brackets, and these ones I've extended out from the side of the tent so that it clears the canopy. And this, again, is another entrance point, nice and super easy. There you go, so that's our second entrance from the side, and that one's actually got a really nice big awning over the door as well. So it's that easy to set up, and now we can go up inside the tent. All right, so we're up in the tent, and the first thing you'll notice is that as soon as I've opened it, I've already got all this bedding inside. So in this tent, I can fit the condensation mat, a mattress, which is actually a little bit thicker than the one that comes in Paddy's clamshell. I've got my double doona, an electric blanket, and a blanket on top. And as if all of that wasn't good enough as it is, I've also got my pillow in here too, and it all closes up. And that's probably my favorite feature about this tent because it just makes everything so much easier. And in addition to that, it's got all the little bells and whistles that make it quite nice up here. So LEDs both sides. I've got good little storage pockets up here with a clear pocket for, you know, watching movies on the iPad or whatever that is. Pockets in the side, you know, suede lined roof, all that sort of stuff, and heaps of room as well, which is one of the main reasons I wanted this tent. So I've never actually slept inside a rooftop tent before, which is a bit strange considering how many people have them these days, but it's new to me, so I can't report on what it's like to sleep in, but I will be spending the next 2 weeks in this tent in all sorts of crazy conditions. So as soon as I've done that, I think I'll have a pretty good gist of how it all works, but I'm looking forward to trying this thing out. All right, so that's all I'm gonna say about the tent for now because I literally have to leave now or I'm gonna miss the boat for my next adventure. So if you enjoyed this, make sure you get subscribed and give it a like because we've got a huge adventure coming up, testing out this new rooftop tent in some crazy conditions. So I'm sure you're gonna wanna see it. So thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next one.